The Samsung Galaxy exhibit promises to bring the full Android experience to budget-minded buyers, but does it live up to those promises? Find out in our review. Hey everybody, I'm Chris Wook. Not everybody needs a super phone, but does the Galaxy exhibit perform well enough to be worth it? Well, let's start the review with a look at the specs. The Samsung Galaxy exhibit features a 3-inch WVGA TFT display and runs a 1 GHz dual-core processor. Looking at memory, it has 1 GB of RAM and 4 GB of internal storage, which is expandable by microSD. This is nice, since the internal storage only has 1.3 GB available to the user. For photos, we're looking at a 5-megapixel main camera in the rear capable of 720p video recording and a VGA secondary camera up front. Powering it all is a modest 1500 mAh battery. The Galaxy exhibit has more than a little in common with the Galaxy S3 Mini. It's apparent in the specs we just saw, which are close to identical, and it's noticeable in the design as well. What does this mean? Well, it means it looks like a Galaxy, though its smaller size causes it to look a little more rounded. The standard Galaxy layout is mostly here. The power button is on the right, the volume rocker is on the left, and you'll find the headphone jack on top and the USB port on the bottom. The one slightly different touch is that the microSD slot is on the left side rather than tucked under the battery cover. Due in part to the smaller size of the device, it feels weightier for its size than many more expensive Galaxy devices, though this also gives it a more solid feel. Whether or not it's actually any tougher than a standard Galaxy isn't something I wanted to test. Resolution isn't everything when it comes to displays, but it does count for a lot. With the exhibit's 3.8-inch screen and a resolution of 800 by 480, that leaves us with a pixel density of 245 pixels per inch. Not eye-destroyingly low, but nothing to write home about either. The lack of sharpness is definitely noticeable, especially when looking at text, but the small size of the display makes it easier to deal with than it would be on a larger device. The display is a TFT LCD, so colors are more natural and less saturated than they are on the Super AMOLED displays used on Samsung's higher-end phones. Whether or not this is good or bad is a matter of taste. Personally, I prefer the slightly muted colors, but there are a ton of fans of the ultra-colorful S-AMOLED displays. Viewing angles are decent, right in line with what we'd expect from a TFT. Brightness could definitely be a little better as viewability in bright sunlight isn't great. Black levels, on the other hand, are fairly good. The Galaxy exhibit runs a Novathor STE U8420 chipset with a 1 GHz dual-core processor and Mali 400 GPU. This is a configuration we don't see much, so we were curious to see how it performed. As usual, we started with Antutu Benchmark and ran it 10 different times in different conditions. Scores were fairly consistent, ranging from just over 6,300 on the low end to upwards of 6,800 on the higher end. Our final average score was 6,629. Next, we turned to Epic Citadel. Because this is a Cortex A9 processor, the ultra-high quality setting wasn't available to us, which was probably for the best anyway, as the Galaxy exhibit struggled a bit on the high quality setting, reaching an average of just 34.9 frames per second. The high performance setting was a bit better, with an average of 37.4 frames per second. Despite the expected low benchmark scores, the Galaxy exhibit doesn't usually feel sluggish at all in terms of normal use. While you might notice the occasional stutter when scrolling through various screens, apps launch quickly and it never feels like you're waiting for the phone. Gamers may be disappointed as you're not going to play the most hardware-intensive games here, but light gaming is fine. Call quality is good, but I wasn't able to test data very well as both T-Mobile and AT&T have spotty service in my area. At times I was able to connect to HSPA Plus and achieve marginally decent speeds, while at others I was limited to Edge. The Galaxy exhibit runs Android 4.1.2 Jelly Bean and is overlaid with Samsung's TouchWiz UI. Initially, I was a little concerned that this would affect performance, but luckily it didn't seem to. T-Mobile branding is very present from the home screen to the apps. A few of the usual suspects from Samsung, like its App Store, S-Memo, and S-Voice are included. A whole lot more T-Mobile apps are included, like 411 and More, Caller Tunes, Mobile Hotspot, T-Mobile Name ID, T-Mobile TV, and Visual Voicemail, alongside other apps like Yelp and Lookout Security. Some of these may be useful, but on a phone with so little internal storage, I'm sure that a lot of people would have preferred fewer pre-installed apps. The Galaxy Exhibit is a budget phone, so we expected a budget camera. That's pretty much what you're getting here, but that said, the camera was better than we were expecting. The camera UI is similar to higher-end Galaxy models, albeit with less features and shooting modes. Still, continuous shot, smile shot, and panorama modes are included, alongside more gimmicky modes like cartoon. You can also adjust exposure, ISO, white balance, and metering if you want to get more hands-on with your photos. The 5-megapixel main camera produces sharp, fairly neutral-looking photos. In single-shot mode with everything set to auto, the photos we took didn't appear over or underexposed, and colors were well-balanced, if not particularly vivid. The 720p video capture produces similar results when it comes to color and sharpness, and motion was fairly smooth. All in all, the camera was a pleasant surprise here. With a battery capacity of just 1500 mAh, you might be worried about short battery life, and with a stated talk time of 9 hours, you might worry a bit more. Granted, this phone isn't going to last you through a weekend, but it should be enough to get most people through even a fairly long day. After a 15-hour day of testing, benchmarking, and shooting, all while leaving the screen on quite a bit, the Galaxy Exhibit had roughly 35% battery life remaining. This use included being connected to HSPA Plus or Edge plus Wi-Fi. Basically, if you're careful with how much you use it, the Galaxy Exhibit should keep enough battery life on hand to be usable throughout an entire day, but you might want to keep a charger or spare battery handy just in case. With a price of $19.99 with a 2-year contract or $216 contract-free, the Galaxy Exhibit is a perfect match for somebody who wants an Android phone without paying too much at once. Yeah, there are similar phones with similar performance at similar price points, but if you're looking for a Galaxy at a low price, the Exhibit is hard not to recommend. We have an in-depth written companion to this video at AndroidAuthority.com. You can find the link to the article in the description. Make sure to stay tuned to Android Authority for reviews, news, Q&A, and more. I'm Chris Wook, and as always, thanks for watching.